Hey guys, how's it going? And welcome to the Action Channel. So today I want to talk about some of our fallen heroes, or at least some of our childhood heroes, because this weekend we happened to lose two of them. And one of them was Richard Chamberlain, and another one, of course, was the great Richard Norton. I also want to touch on the death of Brandon Lee, believe it or not, because today is March 31st. And it's the 32nd anniversary of Brandon Lee's death. So, it's been a very long time, and he lived to be 28 years old, which means today he would have been 60. But it's been 32 years, and interestingly enough, his father, Bruce Lee, lived to be 32. So, anyway, so I want to just talk a little bit about Brandon Lee, but also March 31st today would actually have been Richard Chamberlain's 91st birthday, and he died just 2 days shy of his 91st birthday. So I wonder what's going on with this date. But anyway, so let's talk about a little bit about Richard Chamberlain, but also definitely more about Richard Norton, the great Richard Norton. And I've already done a couple of other videos about him, and I'll try to link them after this one. I actually managed to find about 5 movies, there's probably more, but 5 movies that Richard Norton has done. That's actually on YouTube right now. Full movies for you to see if you want to look them up. So I'll tell you which ones they are. And I have looked them up, so I know it's for real. It's not like you need a code or this and that. They're all in English. You don't need to speak Spanish or Chinese or something. My own Chinese is a little rusty because sometimes it's dubbed in a completely different language. So, just thought that there's not much we can do, unfortunately, with the passing of a legend. But what we can do is to go down memory lane and talk about the man, celebrate his life, his career, his amazing martial arts skills, and of course all the entertainment in movies. So that being said, I think we should take a look at the great Richard Norton. Richard Norton was definitely a one of a kind.
Painful.
I think it's pretty safe to say that there will never be another Richard Norton in martial arts and action films. Richard Norton was without a doubt the first Australian martial arts action star, which is quite an accomplishment. And he also inspired millions and millions of people the world over to study martial arts and get involved with action movies. Because not only could the man fight, a lot of people can fight, he made it look cool, he had great charisma, he could act, he also had something that a lot of other action guys simply don't have. He had a really good sense of humor, and we see a lot of that in some of the Jackie Chan movies that he did. To see these two masters in action, performing some of the greatest fights that we have seen in action scenes, while at the same time being able to have a lot of great comedic timing, is absolutely amazing and very rare. Now, of course, every generation of action stars come along and everybody seems to bring something new and fresh and different. However, Richard Norton brought so much. It's hard to talk about Richard Norton in past tense, because just a couple of days ago he was still with us. And I remember watching this man for the very first time when I was just 7 years old, when I saw the movie The Octagon. It was one of those very old VHS tapes that you kind of laugh at today, that you probably can only find in a museum these days. Nonetheless, it was the man's introduction to movies. And he not only got to show off some of his fancy martial arts skills, that's still considered one of the 25 greatest fight scenes in all of martial arts movies to this day, but he also got to play this real jackass that tries to give Chuck Norris a hard time. Now at the time, Chuck Norris and Richard Norton was already great buddies, so I'm sure they must have had a lot of fun doing this scene. Chuck Norris also used him in several other movies, but that almost wasn't necessary because Richard Norton could definitely hold his own, and he spent the next 20 years in a lot of different roles, from small bit parts to leading man to the good guy, the bad guy, pretty much everything you can think of. Whatever it was, Richard Norton could pull it off. However, Norton was so much more than just an actor. He was a fight coordinator, stunt coordinator, performed a lot of stunts himself. He also worked security and worked as bodyguards for a lot of celebrities. as well as trained them in martial arts when they were preparing for roles and movies themselves. He was definitely one of the best in the business. He had a great reputation, they loved working with him, and they loved just to be around him on a more friendly level. Richard Norton was totally down to earth, and that always comes in handy, especially on a movie set, since quite often there tend to be a lot of ego around. But not this guy. Now, there's so much to say about this man, but guys, as I mentioned, I have 2 other videos that I just did, sort of in the honor of Richard Norton. One of them is more of a tribute, the other one explains a little bit more about his background as a martial artist. So if that's what you prefer, I'll try to link it after this one so you can check it out. And I also promised you to mention the name of the movies that Norton has done that's on YouTube that you can see for free. Okay, so one of them is The Kick Fighter. The next one is Lady Dragon, opposite Cynthia Rothrock. The third one is The Sword of Bushido. Number 4 is Under the Gun. And then there's The Fighter. I'm sure there's more of these that you can enjoy, but this is just to start. So please, guys, get the popcorn ready. Okay, I also mentioned Richard Chamberlain. So even though he's not what you would consider a bona fide action star, and he certainly will not go down in history that way, he actually did some very interesting action-related movies. And I guess you can call him the king of the miniseries. Since I don't think you can think of anyone in the 70s and especially in the 80s that did more than he did. And they were extremely successful. Now, the women, of course, know him from The Thornbirds. But we men, we obviously know him from Shogun from 1980. Which, like so many millions of other people, I enjoyed watching when I was little. And that's how I learned about Japan and samurais and so many other things.
You are now samurai.
And I actually revisited the old Shogun just a couple of years ago. And I think in some ways it still holds up. Of course, the wigs are kind of out of style, etc. But altogether, I think was really, really good. And the female actress performs one of the best performances I think I've ever seen. She was spectacular in that role. Now, just a few years later, Richard Chamberlain actually did King Solomon's Mines for Canon Films, and he played opposite a very young Sharon Stone. Now, a lot of you guys obviously have seen it. Now, it was actually a relatively low-budget movie, but you know what? It was a lot of fun, and I saw it just about a year ago. Now, they also did a sequel to King Solomon's Mine just 1 year later, which was Alan Quatermain and the Lost City. However, I was very disappointed in that one. But King Solomon's Mines definitely holds up.
Great reflexes, boy.
Silly, funny, very 80s, cheesy, but still a really good laugh. So why not? And believe it or not, what a lot of you guys probably don't even know is that Richard Chamberlain actually played the original Jason Bourne. Yes, that's right. I believe it was in 1988. Now, at the time, he was already in his mid-50s, so not exactly the Matt Damon that we knew from the later films. But nonetheless, Richard Chamberlain can put on his resume that he has played Jason Bourne, and that's pretty cool. Now, he also had an appearance in The Towering Inferno from 1974, as well as countless other performances. He also did theater, he could sing, there was nothing that he couldn't do. And his career would span over 6 decades. Now, we don't have time to get into all the details. I just wanted to touch on some of the action-related stuff. And earlier I mentioned Brandon Lee. Since the man died exactly 32 years ago today, on the set of the movie The Crow. Now, Brandon was only 8 years old when his father died in 1973. He lived with his family in Hong Kong at the time, and after the death of his father, they went back to America and lived a much more quiet and obscure life, away from the spotlight and everything. And he actually managed to have a pretty decent, good childhood, all considering. However, he still ended up stepping in his father's footsteps, since he also got involved with Kung Fu, and in the mid to late 80s, he started to pursue a career in acting as well. It led to several smaller parts here and there, but in the early 90s, things changed. First with the 1991 movie Showdown in Little Tokyo opposite Dolph Lundgren, and the following year in Rapid Fire. By now he was ready to appear in the movie The Crow, which was a dream project of his. The movie was shot in South Carolina, and unfortunately towards the end of the shoot, something went horribly wrong. Brandon Lee had shot nearly all of his scenes when he was fatally wounded on set by a prop gun. Now there's so many similarities between Brandon Lee and his father Bruce, since both of them died young prior to the release of their breakthrough films. So anyway guys, thanks for watching. If you like this kind of content, action movies, martial arts, fitness and all that stuff, please hit that like and subscribe button. I'll try to keep on top with everything that's going on, all the news from the world of action movies and entertainment. That being said, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.